I would think a lot of the families I see are very overwhelmed by the totality of the situation, the medical and the social sequelae that they find themselves in. And the gift that we have being in the situation is to help them prioritise what's important, what our longer term goals are, and give them purpose, give them journey.
I always try and get the families to focus on what they can see in front of them and not plan the wedding and the job and all of these things that are not going to happen, and try and get them back to the moment and enjoy the child that they've got in front of them.
Hi, this is Connect, Pause and Reflect, CPR for clinicians. In this series, we hear from paediatric clinicians from across Australia who joined us as part of a 4-year research project to share their reflections on the experience of delivering care for complex patients. Our hope is that their shared reflections may help others to feel empowered, more connected, and able to appreciate how they make a difference to patients and families and what sustains them in the many challenges they face. Welcome to part 2 of Making a Difference. In part 1, clinicians reflected on their approaches to consultations, the importance of good communication, building relationships, and establishing trust with families. In today's podcast, clinicians continue to reflect on how they make a difference, highlighting the importance of understanding the grief families experience, helping them to focus on what matters, and empowering and encouraging families to live in the moment and enjoy the little wins. Up first, clinicians discuss the journey of grief many families experience.
Trying to understand where families are in the stage of grief, really. It's a grief reaction, and you have your various stages through that, and it's trying to meet them on that journey and then personalising your care to where they're at, meeting them where they're at, but then helping them through that journey, I would think a lot of the families I see are very overwhelmed by the totality of the situation, the medical and the social sequelae that they find themselves in. And part of, I suppose, the gift that we have being in the situation is to help them prioritise what's important here and now, what our longer term goals are, and really help focus them in on that, and give them purpose, give them journey.
I mean, there's some families that you can't really help them make sense of the situation they're in. Sometimes the situation they're in is so diabolical that for anybody to make sense of it is really complicated. But I think by giving them the space and asking them about where they're at, how they're doing, where they're in the process of acceptance, it gives them something that they often don't get from anywhere else. So they may be getting information from their parents that they're not trying hard enough to find an answer or a solution, and they're getting information from the internet that they can get all these other treatments, but maybe nobody else is actually asking them how they're doing and helping them to accept where they're at.
In this next section, clinicians reflect on how they make a difference by deciding which battles to fight, recognising the real questions families are asking, and helping families live in the moment and enjoy the child they have.
The two main aspects, I think, which are easy to forget. One is, which wars to fight when there is a discussion about new and novel things, because once there's a diagnosis, there's always a cascade of rare therapies. And so you have to choose that and then let families run with some if you don't feel that that is detrimental to other care and their finance and things. And the other aspect is to try and bring back the spotlight to the themes that are common to children, irrespective of their rare diagnosis. So, their sleep may be a problem, behavior may be a problem. And that may be something that you understand as a care provider or clinician that, yes, this looks like anxiety. I know how to treat that.
as we go along on that journey, to almost listen to the cues that they bring up. So when you've been seeing a family for a long time, sometimes they ask you something and sometimes it's what they're not quite saying. And I think it's having that relationship and that partnering to be able to go, actually, this is the moment where they're actually asking me something. Often it's, do you think they'll be able to live independently? Or how are they going to manage as they get to be adults? Who's going to look after them? Thinking about, for girls, particularly menstruation, that's always a big thing. And sometimes families ask that at 2, but it's better to have that answer. And then sometimes they ask something and you just think, actually what you're saying is, how am I going to manage this in a few years' time? What is my future going to look like as a parent of this child? And being able to sort of guide them on that journey as well. So I think that's encouraging them to feel that there's a future and that there's a good future. It will be different to what they may have expected, but we can actually help guide them along those sort of other things in the child's life.
I always try and get the families to focus on what they can see in front of them and not plan the wedding and the job and all of these things that are not going to happen, and try and get them back to the moment and enjoy the child that they've got in front of them. There are going to be positives and focus on that. And I think I've done it subconsciously. It's just to try and focus on something really good about a child and get the parents to see it. And yes, there are a lot of bad things, but here's the one good thing. And for the deaths, I often say the life wasn't in vain. There was a reason. It has changed you. It has made all of us a better person. So again, I'm trying to get a positive out of negatives.
Next, clinicians reflect on empowering families by helping them to focus on the doable tasks and also giving them agency and permission to do less.
I do believe that as a nurse, you can enable, you can empower families incredibly. So what might look like impossible. So when a child stops being able to take oral feeds and they need to have nasogastric or peg feeding through their bellies, you can say to a mum, you know what, you can do this. You can do this and you can do this. It's not going to stop you being a mum. And we're going to show you how to do this really well. And you will be able to give your child nutrition. So I feel like in the nursing space, we are often the deliverers of the enablement of being able to continue to care for your child.
I think it is really around sort of that recognition of them knowing their child so well that I'm very much guided by what their issues are for them, to empower them to say, this is the most important thing to me, and this is what I'm worried about for my child because I know him or her so well, to be able to empower them to be able to set an agenda for them, because it is there every day and I'm just seeing snapshots at certain time points.
A lot of people I find are really scared about how they might recognise when their child is sick or deteriorating, and going with them on the journey and saying, look, you know your child. I often say to people, you can trust yourself a little bit in seeing that you will see your child is not well, because it will be different. You know your child better than anybody else. And you might say, well, before we can detect anything, that my kid's just not right at the moment. Allowing them to be the person who's in control of their child. And also saying to them, I often say to them to let them know that they can tell other people, if somebody's not listening to them, say, look, I do know my child. This is just not normal. And giving them information on what to expect, but also to trust themselves. Because I think sometimes they think, I know nothing about this, and they get overwhelmed by the fear of what to expect, whereas actually probably much more adept at seeing when things are going wrong than anybody else.
But I also think an important part of what I end up doing is giving them permission to do less. So I think they get spent a lot of time with everybody saying, you should do this and you should do this and you should do this. And then having that realistic discussion is like, what's important to you? What's doable for you? This is one child in a family and he's very important, but so are the other two, and so are you and your husband, and really having those discussions about trying to prioritize
and talking about what both prioritize in terms of what's important, but also what may be effective.
In addition to empowering families, clinicians reflected on how they can help families celebrate and rejoice in the little wins of their child.
What represents a win for us in our professional, work, as especially when you get to a staff specialist or that level, you're at the top of your game. And I wonder if we need to make sure that people coming up understand that a win is not necessarily you've made a diagnosis, you've cured your patients, they got to school or they went on holiday, and you can share in those wins with the family. And I think that just trying to teach that it isn't all about that little bit of medicine. It's about, what is this family going through, and have we enabled them to have a slightly easier life than they would, and join in that, right? Like that's, you're part of that process. And so sharing the win of it.
To actually deliberately be asked, what has been the most memorable moment in the last months, but also asking about achievements, developmental achievements, but also about, what was the most joyful moment, and just have a bit of a balance in that consultation, looking at very pragmatic solving problems, but also celebrating things that as a parent, he realizes that the clinicians value those things. The child is not just a problem to be solved. That's something that I try to incorporate in all my consultations now. Parents have a moment where they can be proud of their child, when normally in a consultation, it's all about the problem.
Finally, in focusing on what matters, clinicians reflected on the importance of applauding parents and acknowledging the difference they are making to their child.
I think also applauding the families in relation to how incredibly unique and important their relationship is to their child and young person, and acknowledging, like verbally saying what a difference they are making to their child, and how much more comfortable the child is when they're around them, and how wonderfully they respond to the comfort that they bring to their child, how wonderfully the child responds when the parent or carer is around. And just acknowledging openly that relationship that they have, and that what a difference they are making.
So I try as much as I can to commend what they're doing well as caring, whether it's the range of their Achilles and the fact they've been doing some stretches, whether it's something that, a Lego thing that their child has built that they've enjoyed, or whatever it is, to try and let them know that I see that basically that child is as best off as they can be because of those parents. The other thing, which might sound silly, but I think helps, is to demonstrate that I have a genuine affection for the child. I do think because of the vulnerability, that showing that this kid has a special place in my heart, and whether that's because I remember something about them or a joke that I made the child or whatever it is, but I try and invite that warmth and affection into the interaction.
That concludes part 2 on the topic of making a difference. If you're interested in learning more about the research project behind these podcasts, or about hosting Connect, Pause and Reflect sessions in your workplace, further resources are available on the Sydney Children's Hospitals Network website. We would like to acknowledge the ClinEquip steering group led by Professor Annie Bai, including Fleur Leman, Professor Kenneth Nunn, Suzanne Nevin, Erin Beavis, Rachel McLaughlin, Rebecca McIntosh, Doctors Rani Sachdev and Elizabeth Palmer, and the ClinEquip Advisory Group who contributed to the co-design of these resources. We thank the Manildra Group for philanthropic funding. Thank you for listening.